Hello, it's Peter Merrick, and I want to thank you for joining me on the previous two parts on philanthropy. This is such an exciting and such an important topic, and it's not talked about enough. So I just want to recap what we talked about in part one and part two before we move to the last section. In part one, we looked at what the ancients thought of philanthropy. They believed that it was important to give because they didn't call it charity. They did not call philanthropy charity. They called it tzedakah, which means justice, doing what's right. So if you receive, it's your responsibility to share with others, to go and lift them up, to lift the community. Remember we talked about that when all boats rise, we all benefit. And that is the purpose of philanthropy. That being said, what does philanthropy mean? I'm going to leave this with you. It comes from the Greek, and it means the love of humankind, the love of mankind. So when you give, what you're doing is you're showing love to the community, to the things that are important to you, to the people who've come before you, the people who are now, and also the people who will come after you. Part two, we looked at the Gospel of Wealth, which focused on Andrew Carnegie and his essay, his thesis that he wrote in 1898, 3 years before he sold his business, and he was crowned the wealthiest man who ever lived. And in his thesis, he determined that he was going to follow giving away his money to see the benefits as he was alive. So from 1901, when he sold his business, to 1919, when he was no longer here, he'd given away 95% of his assets. And one of the things that I benefited from, because the city I'm from, is he actually founded and created over 2,000 libraries because he believed in empowering the youth, empowering people who want to go and make the world better. And that was his focus. But what he focused on was if you have the ability to give it away while you're here, to see its benefits, also to give your wisdom and your knowledge to those people, that is the best way and the most gratifying way, and to actually know that you have a legacy. Because as I mentioned earlier, he made a comment, it was a joke. He said that the value of a steer, a male cow, and a miser to society is only when they're dead, because you really don't get any benefit from them, and no one's ever going to mourn those people. Just remember that. So let's focus on part three. Part three is inspired by a book that I really enjoyed. I was sitting in my bookstore and I was reading a book, and I looked over and I saw a book that really intrigued me. It was called The Art of Giving, The Business Plan for the Soul, and it was written by two gentlemen. One of them was Charles Brofman, Seagram's, the alcohol family. The other author was Jeffrey Solomon, who had actually advised many of the world's wealthiest individuals to write checks for charity to see the benefit while they were here. And it was a fascinating book, and it really talked about the psychology. From the psychology of someone who advised people who had lots of money to the psychology of someone who had money. Charles Brofman is one of the billionaires who has pledged that he's going to give away half of his wealth while alive from the Andrea and Charles Brofman Foundation. So I felt so inspired by this book, I hunted down Jeffrey Solomon and I said, Jeffrey, I really want to write an article because I wrote for the largest accounting publication, and I wanted to go and show his knowledge to advisors who are advising kings, and I would say advising kings, they are advisors to kings, how to approach the topic of philanthropy. So I bugged him, and he was so gracious, and I wrote this really great article. I was putting together my last textbook Ask Advisors Seeking Knowledge, a comprehensive guide to succession and estate planning from LexisNexis. The theme of the book was looking at someone who was worth about $30 million, who had built it from nothing, had started a business, and now was transitioning to the last third of their life to make it the best third. There were 54 contributors. And I was writing the chapter on how advisors should approach philanthropy. And as I was working on that chapter, I felt I wasn't qualified because I knew someone who was the most qualified person that I had ever met anywhere in the world. And it was Jeffrey Solomon. So I kept on bugging Jeffrey until Jeffrey was such a gentleman to get me to stop bugging him. He wrote an incredible chapter speaking to advisors, trusted advisors, CPAs, CFAs, CLUs, CFPs, you name it, TPs, all these fiduciaries. He was speaking to them how to have the conversation with a successful individual like Charles Brofman and anyone else who would be in that position, to have that conversation about giving. And I want to share with you some insight that I received from those conversations with Jeffrey. Did you know that there are 3 ways that people give, or 3 motivations? One is biographical. What that means is that I've gone to a university, I give to my university, my family's always given to certain causes, and that's what I give to. The second is relationship. We all know that. Someone is very active in a charity and they might be having an event and will buy a table, or will donate a tree, or we will make a small donation. Jeffrey said the most important one for successful people is strategic. What strategic is finding something that actually really resonates within you and your soul. And this is where people are not looking as advisors to have those conversations with their clients. And I make a joke about guys like me and maybe you. I'm a person who signs the back of checks, the ones that my clients write. I'm a check casher. If you are a trusted advisor, the clients that you have are the ones who sign the front of the checks and check writers. And they come to you to offer advice. So in the next few years, next decade, we're going to see the largest transition ever happening, where there's going to be, and that money needs advice on where it should go. And the question that trusted advisors should be asking their clients, what individuals who are in that position should be asking themselves, what's important to me and what is my responsibility that the world is going to be better than what I found it? And that is a question I'm going to leave you with. And what I promise you is I'm going to reach out to Jeffrey, because I think we should continue this subject on philanthropy by actually having a talk with Jeffrey, because I can only tell you what's in the mindset, and I've been fortunate to work with some really successful people. But Jeffrey has worked, again, with some of the most successful people on the planet to help them realize their philanthropic goals, and to turn those goals of outliving themselves into their realities while they're on this planet. I want to thank you for joining with me on this adventure. And if we're not friends, please share, please like, please make a comment. And if we're not friends right now, please follow. So please like, please make a comment, please share. I can only grow with your help. And I'm looking forward to actually going and having Jeffrey on that podcast, because I think it's something that people on LinkedIn have to actually focus on. Remember, you want to make the world better than you found it. You have an invested stake that you are here and other people will eventually benefit. We are the beneficiaries of all those generations that made that investment for us to have what we have now. Have a wonderful night. Talk soon.